Meet the M134 GAU-17 Vulcan, the most dangerous America's Gatling gun. The M134 GAU-17 Vulcan cannon is a 6-barreled air-cooled, medium machine gun used primarily as a fire suppression weapon in aircraft for the U.S. military. The so-called Gatling design relies on electric motors to power the barrels, resulting in a firing rate as much as 6,000 rounds per minute. It is used in a variety of rotor wing aircraft in the door gunner position, and is used by the U.S. Navy for its riverine craft and special operations watercraft. Once it was discovered that sluggish, low-flying helicopters were vulnerable to enemy fire emanating from the concealment of the jungle, the M134 became a common sight on U.S. Army helicopters and fixed-wing gunships throughout the Vietnam War. A suppression weapon was required to clear the forest and attack the enemies lying underneath. Soon after the end of the Second World War, the newly formed United States Air Force identified a need for an improved gun system for its aircraft. While adequate as an air combat or ground attack weapon during World War II, the Browning M250 caliber machine gun had been rendered obsolete by jet aircraft and needed to be replaced by a weapon with increased range, rate of fire, and projectile lethality. Realizing that single-barreled automatic weapons had essentially reached their design limits, the U.S. Army Ordnance Research and Development Service hit on the idea of reintroducing the multi-barreled rotary weapon invented by Richard J. Gatling in the 1880s. Initial tests proved promising as a vintage Gatling gun, now powered by an electric motor in place of the usual hand crank, was able to achieve rates of fire in excess of 4,000 rounds per minute. Dr. Richard J. Gatling devised the Gatling rotary-style ammunition delivery method in the 1880s, and the GAU-17 operation followed in his footsteps. The barrels of these initial models were rotated by hand-cranked compressive force, and cartridges were fed from the top. The design was proven to be valid, and it was reviewed many years later when an electric motor was fitted to provide current for the required rotating action. Despite its 1960s roots, the GAU-17A is still used by conventional and combat operations troops today. When the original GAU-17 was being devised, the project was given the name Vulcan, hence the common name used to refer to the weapon. The M61 Gatling weapon, as well as aircraft-mounted rotary cannons capable of launching 20mm rounds, were developed as part of the program. With the increased usage of aircraft as armed combat ships during the Vietnam War, General Electric redesigned the M61 into the M134 minigun series, which was configured to discharge the NATO standard rifle cartridge and was reasonably transportable. The typical M134 GAU-17 is a 6 air-cooled, electrically controlled rotary machine gun. Thanks to the electric drive, the firearm revolves inside its casing, with a revolving shooting pin component and rotational chamber. The multi-barrel configuration of the minigun not only prevents overheating, but also fulfills other purposes. Because the serial operation of discharging occurs in all barrels simultaneously, many barrels provide for a higher capacity for a high fire rate. As a result, as one barrel discharges, 2 others are extracting shells, and 3 more are being reloaded. Numerous closed-bolt rifle barrels are stacked in a spherical casing to make up the minigun. A secondary power supply, normally electric, pneumatic, or hydraulic, rotates the barrels. The compressed gases or recoil force of fired cartridges propel other rotating barrel guns. Although the firearm can pump linked ammo, a delinking converter is required to remove the connections as the cartridges are loaded into the barrels. This is basically what makes the M134 GAU-17 such a good Army weapon, though highly priced. At the same time, the technology behind its design makes the weapon a perfect military gun that never jams.